There we go. All right, perfect. All right, so first and foremost, welcome to the class today. All right, so today's class is all around the Lone Wolf Transact platform. But before we get going, just a reminder, if you have to leave or anything of that sort, all right, you want to come back on and access this later on or anything like that, this is all accessible under scottleroymarketing.com. All right, so once you go to scottleroymarketing.com, sign in with your Market Center number on here under the login section. I currently am logged in. That's why it says log out. And then under agent resources, we're going to have our recorded training classes. And this is where you can access the Lone Wolf Transact options. All right, so just a reminder on here, this is where you can access Lone Wolf Transact for all of our Transact courses. So not only will this include Lone Wolf Transact 101 classes, it'll include all of our quick tips on here as well. And then it'll even include our preparing or prepping for Lone Wolf courses on here as well. So that way, if you want to see how you can actually preserve everything from DocuSign before that 7/14 cutoff date, all right, so a little bit over a month, only a month and 2 days until DocuSign is officially no more, all right, this will help to actually preserve everything. All right, and a great question already came in with the transition from DocuSign to Lone Wolf. Will the rooms and documents in DocuSign be deleted, or will they simply no longer be connected to Command? So they are going to be removed, so you will want to save everything. Now, if you have it over inside your Command account, you've already uploaded it on there, you should be good to go, but I would highly suggest going through and saving everything possible. All right, that's going to make your life that much simpler. All right, so let's get started on the class today. So the first thing that we're going to do in this case, all right, is we're going to go through and we're going to, first and foremost, see how to set up the Lone Wolf account. So if you already have Lone Wolf set up on here, you are all good to go. All right. But just a heads up, if you do not have it set up, we're going to talk about that real quick. So if you do have this set up, feel free to just take the next 5 minutes or so to just kind of unwind. All right, we're going to get this set up first, and then we'll get that rock and rolling. All right, and Cassie, on a great note, dot loop is not going away. You can continue to utilize dot loop. All right, so when we're inside Command, we're going to click on our name at the top right. All right, and once we click on our name at the top right, we're going to select the settings option from the drop-down menu. All right, so we're going to click on our name and then select settings on here to access that right away. Now, this is going to take us to the back end of our account on Command, where we can see if we have Lone Wolf connected, or outside of seeing if we have Lone Wolf connected, we can see what other platforms we might have connected as well too. All right, so I'm going to click on my name at the top right and then select settings from the drop-down menu. So with that being said on here, once we pull this up, there we go. All right, this is going to show under our signature section, all right, which ones do we currently have? All right, so we have under digital signatures and transactions, we've got Lone Wolf, DocuSign, and dot loop. All right, so if you do not have it connected on here, all right, this is a great option where you can actually go through and connect it right away, and that's what we're going to do. Now, just a reminder, DocuSign is the platform that's going away on 7/14. All right, so that one is officially going away in this case. All right, so on those Tuesday classes at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, so on and so forth. Every Tuesday this month, we're doing a class on how to transition everything from DocuSign. And if you're currently utilizing dot loop, that will remain accessible for you. All right, now just a heads up, if you do have dot loop and you want to get rid of dot loop on here, on a great note, even if you remove your account with dot loop, it'll still keep all those loops on there, so you can download them and save them moving forward. All right, so hopefully that'll help out a little bit. I saw a question come in around that as well too. Now, just a reminder, all the items, all the questions on DocuSign, that is going to be done during our DocuSign class on Tuesdays. All right, so all the classes around are questions on API Nation. What are we going to lose in this case? Can we, save everything on here? That's going to all be during our Tuesday class to go over all that right away. All right, but from what I've heard, if you want to continue with DocuSign, it'd have to be a brand new account from what I'm hearing. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the Connect Account option on the right-hand side next to Lone Wolf. And this is going to allow me to connect my Lone Wolf account for Transact. Now, if you have another Lone Wolf account, if you've got one through Lone Wolf, whether it's from Cloud CMA, whether you had Transaction Desk before. If you want to continue to utilize that, you're definitely more than welcome to. All right, let me do this one more time. That's a little, see what it actually looks like on here. All right, so I'm going to click on this. We're going to connect our Lone Wolf account. Here we go. All right, so if you do not have a Lone Wolf account set up, we can set one up right now, or if you have one, you can sign in. So I'm going to set one up in this case by clicking the sign up button. All right. And then from here, once we have that, it's going to say sign up with Lone Wolf Technologies. All right, so I'm going to put inside my email that I want to utilize. All right, and then once I click continue on here, it's going to ask me to create my account. All right, so I'm going to create this real quick. Oh no, is it not giving me the, oh gosh darn it. All right, it's giving me the error on here again. All right, let's see if we can get through this. We're going to find out. If not, I might not be able to save this on here. That's okay. All right, but when you're going through, you are going to want to put inside the country, state. I'll try and do this one more time. And then if you notice on here for your password, it has to be at least 10 characters with at least 3 of the following: a lowercase letter, uppercase letters, numbers, and a special character on here. And you can't have more than 2 identical characters in a row. All right, you do not have to use the K2B email. You can use whatever email you want to. This is a different platform than Zip Forms. All right, on the Zip Forms side, there are a couple different connections you can make. I've not seen Zip Forms on there, though, but we'll get into that later. All right, and then once you click continue, that is going to send you a code to your email to connect this right away. So I don't believe mine's going to work because of this. So I'm going to try this one more time and see if it's going to work on here. All right, if not, that is A-okay. All right, there we go. All right, so now I can complete this with y'all. All right, so I'm going to put this in real quick. Put inside that password. All right, and then we'll click continue on here. All right, now once that comes through, we're going to receive an email from Lone Wolf directly. Right, and this is what the email is going to look like. It's going to say, welcome to Lone Wolf Technologies. Thanks for signing up. Please verify your account by entering the code below. So we're going to copy that code. And that's specific for us directly. We're going to paste that inside, and that's what's going to connect this with our command account. So once we sign in, that's then going to give us a full connection on here. Now, if you are already connected, wait for this to pop up. Here we go. So now it's going to show the backend on here. I don't have to worry about this too much. So I can X out of that. This should refresh. And now it's going to say connected, current status on. All right, if you're having issues connecting on here, please try an incognito window if possible, or incognito, I guess window in this case. All right, that'll typically do the trick. If you noticed on mine, I had to refresh it 3 times, and then I was able to actually go through and connect it. So it might just be trying one more time on here to get that rocking and rolling. All right, and we will talk about the MLS stuff and everything in a second on here, along with items for VA and everything. So that is going to come up, I promise. All right, but once we have this connected, just a reminder on here, there's not a way to disconnect like we had previously over on DocuSign or .loop to connect a different account. But you are able to change your email address on the back end on here. So there are opportunities where you can go through and adjust that at any time. All right, and if you have a Lone Wolf account that your MLS is already connected with you, you are able to link this on here. Should be good to go to use that. All right, typically there'll be either it's your own email address or a specific email address that the MLS will have you use to sign in. You should be able to link that on here as well too. All right, but the reason you will have the Lone Wolf account on here is the same reason you want to have DocuSign or .loop connected, is because once you actually start the opportunity in this case, you'll then be able to actually link this with the transactions inside Lone Wolf Transact, so those documents can feed over automatically. All right, and the class is being recorded. It's going to be accessible later on today on scottleroymarketing.com under Agent Resources and Recorded Training Classes. All right, so to get into the bulk of the class that we're actually going to be going over today, all right, let's get this rocking and rolling for y'all now. All right, so I'm going to move over to this one instead so we can see some fun stuff on here. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to our home page real quick. All right, so we're going to go back over to our homepage. And what we're going to do next is we're going to start that opportunity. So let's click on the opportunities icon on the left-hand side, the little hands kind of giving a handshake over here, handshake icon. All right, you can have DocuSign and Lone Wolf connected at the same time. It's up to you as to which one you're going to utilize in the backend, but after 7.14, it'll only be Lone Wolf or .loop that'll be accessible. So I'm going to click on the opportunities section on here. All right, and then today, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a fake opportunity so we can play around with this. All right, so we're just going to do a fake opportunity. Nothing too crazy, but I just want to be able to see what it's going to look like, how we can connect it, how we can get in the back end of Lone Wolf. So there's a lot of stuff we're going to cover. But let's just make one on here. And what I may suggest when you're creating the opportunity, whether you want to do it for listing, buyer, landlord, or tenant, I'll do one for listing real quick, but maybe utilize yourself as the list or the seller in this case, so you can see what that's going to look like from their point of view as well. It's always great to see that. All right, since we're just playing around with this will help out tremendously. All right, so I'm going to do a listing real quick. I'm going to put inside my seller. I'm going to create the new contact on here. I'm going to say it's Scott Leroy. Scott L. at scottleroymarketing.com. All right, and the more information that I have on here, whenever I set this up, right, if I go through, like, here's the opportunity name, great. I've got the contact information. If I add in additional info on here, this information is going to populate over inside Lone Wolf Transact as well. So this is going to help out tremendously. And we're going to show that in 1 second of the detail section. So I'm going to say estimated listing price. Let's just do 500,000, 3% commission. And I'll say the close date is going to be August 31st. Why not? All right, so we're just making, once again, fake information on here. We're just playing around with some stuff. All right, I am utilizing myself, though, just because inevitably I want to be able to see, what that seller is going to receive as well, too. Cut my finger on here. Ow. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm going to click that. And now we have everything over here in our details section. So once we have that opportunity started, I'm going to click on the documents icon, I guess it's not icon, but documents option up here at the top. I'm going to go and click on that because it'll change colors. All right. And in most cases, before we actually go through and sync with Transact, depending on your office, you may need to pick a checklist on here. And in most cases, you will need to pick that. So I'm going to select the checklist on here. There we go, wrong one, sorry. A lot of do not uses on here. That's okay. So I'm going to do residential. All right, now I've got the checklist ready to go. All right, so now, once I've added in my checklist, now if you notice at the top right, I can click Sync with Transact. Now, if you have .loop or DocuSign on here, you're actually going to have a drop-down where you can sync and choose which one you want to utilize. Now, if you're currently utilizing DocuSign, right, that is going to go away on July 14th. So just a reminder, you can continue to utilize DocuSign up until the 14th. So if you have a listing that is, or a buyer, any transaction in general in the opportunity section that is going to close before 7/14, maybe you want to just continue utilizing DocuSign for that since it's going to close by then, unless the office is telling you otherwise. All right, and if you have a transaction that's inside the opportunity section that is going to close after 7/14, you can always recreate the opportunity, or there is the option to always upload documents manually. All right, so that is an option on here to go through and update that right away. And if you're brand new and only have the Lone Wolf one, you're perfect. All right, because Lone Wolf is going to be the main one that's going to be accessible. 7/14 is when DocuSign is transitioning. All right. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to click on this where it says Sync with Transact. All right, if there's no drop down on there, it just says DocuSign, make sure under your name on here in settings that you have Lone Wolf Transact set up. That was the first thing we did when we started the class today. Make sure you got that set up. So that'll give you the option to use Lone Wolf Transact right away. All right, I'm going to click on Sync with Transact on here. All right, if it's not popping up quite yet, I may suggest maybe refreshing, or in this case, trying another incognito window to see if the cookie's in cache, potentially blocking it. All right, and as you can see, you are going to want to make sure that your pop-ups are displayed on here. So I'm going to go ahead and show the pop-ups on here. I'm going to allow this real quick so it'll pull up. All right, and this is going to take us over to our Transact platform. Now you can go to platform.lwolf.com to sign in, or foundation.lwolf.com. But going through the opportunity section will create that transaction for you, and that'll allow everything to sync back. Because if you notice, I went on here and I said sync with Transact. Now it says go to Transact. All right, and then from here, I can then go through and attach files either from Lone Wolf Transact or manually, and I can pull them from whatever folder I have inside Transact too. All right, if you have the option to choose between Lone Wolf or DocuSign, you can choose either one, but we're doing Lone Wolf today. So Lone Wolf is the one I would suggest, and there's not a mobile app right now, all right, but it is mobile optimized. All right, so when we're in the back end of Lone Wolf on here, we're in our Transact backend. All right, if you are used to using DocuSign, you probably heard the terminology of the room a good amount of times. All right, so you always had each room individually for every transaction that you had. All right, now with that being said on here, in Lone Wolf, instead of rooms, you're actually going to have transactions. All right, so with that being said on here, this is your transaction. And instead of envelopes, you're going to have signings. All right. Right, so when we're first looking at this transaction, this is the transaction directly on here for Scott Leroy 123 Main Street. All right, and then over on the left-hand side, we're going to have all of our details. So this is where you can actually add inside all the different detail information around that particular transaction. So I can see if I want to add inside the image of the particular property or anything I want to highlight on here, I can. I can see I'm currently preparing it. I can then mark it as active if I know that this is active right now and in active status. All right, and if you ever click on this on accident and need to get rid of it, there are 3 dots at the top right, where you can select that and do undo status update, and that'll change this back. There you go. All right, I can even mark it as terminated, and I can view the parties on here. Now the parties, let's go back to this. I clicked on that very quickly. The parties are going to be basically your people, right? So on here, when you're in the parties section, this is where you can add inside anyone else that needs to be a party to the transaction. All right, so I'm going to click on the parties section real quick. And now I can actually see on here, well, I've got myself on here as the listing agent. I've got myself as the seller. All right, and then over here, I've got obviously our listing broker. So if I want to, I can always go through and click these little 3 dots and edit or remove, or I can always go through and add a party individually. Now we are going to talk about how you can automatically add parties later on through templates. But if I want to, I could then say, hey, let's search for a contact on here and see if anything pops up. More than likely, it won't in this case. So I'll want to create a new one. But if you have one, you can utilize that. All right, and if I click create new, then I can add inside their information on here to add over right away. All right, as far as the Lone Wolf app coming out, that I do not know. That would be a Lone Wolf question. All right, the status on here will help you to keep track of everything. The parties should not get notified if you're getting added on here. I've not seen that come through quite yet. All right, and then market centers will typically go through and set up the auto paperwork on here. There you go. So hopefully I answered as many as possible. All right, if I don't get to the questions over the next couple minutes, though, I want to try and get as much of this going as possible. So I know the chat's been going crazy on here, but hopefully Becky's on our team and should be able to help out to answer some of these as well, too. All right, so outside of that, we also have our property section on here. This is where you can go through and add inside. Once again, if I click on this, there we go. All the property information. Now, if you noticed, some of the info that I added in from command pulled over here, or as you can see, save time by importing property details. All right, so under import property data, I can come on here, and if I have an MLS source, I can see if I can pull that in, and this will help me to add that in. If not, I can just go through and manually include this as well. Now, once again, some of this information will help to automatically feed over those documents, those templates. So adding this in is just going to make your life that much easier. So this is a work smarter, not harder situation. All right, so I'm going to go back on here. And then, of course, we also happen to have our offer section as well. All right, so if we have any offers coming in, this is where we can add this in immediately. All right, so I just want to show you what this kind of looks like over here of our details section. And one thing you might notice about this, all right, one thing you might notice on here is that it looks almost identical to your opportunity section. You got your details on the left, and then on the top up here, you have all your different menu items. That's exactly what's going to display up here as well, too. Now, we also happen to have our paperwork section on here. All right, so for the paperwork section, in this case, this is where you can actually view all the different paperwork that is accessible. And once again, this is going to look different for everyone. What you're first seeing on here and what I'm seeing is going to be different unless you're with Office 279. That's the office I'm using as a test right now. All right, so everyone's going to be different. It's going to be based on what documents auto-populate for you on here. All right, but you can also go through and add inside your own paperwork if you want to. And we can even upload new folders, or not upload, but create new folders to organize everything, or even upload by email, right? Because the upload by email section on here, if you are going through, all right, and you have someone that is maybe filling everything out, in person, and they want to use pen and paper for it. Well, once you upload that as a PDF or as a doc or a docx, whatever file it might be, you can use this email to automatically email that directly into this transaction. All right, so that way you do not have to worry about going inside here and accessing it. All right. And Ashley, this offer section on here is just another offer section. I mean, inevitably, you'll definitely want to use the one inside command because you're going to have to do that to get the commission completed. But if you want to put the offer on here, there is an option to send that out as well. All right. Now, if I click on the add paperwork section at the top right up here, this little bluish button, all right, once I click on add paperwork, all right, this is where I can actually view all the different forms that I currently have access to. Now, once again, everyone's forms are going to be a little bit different. Just a reminder, it's all based on the office on there. So I can actually go through and view any of the forms that I currently have on here. And if you aren't seeing a good amount of forms, if you want to say like, hey, I'm with the California Association of Realtors, for instance, at the very bottom down here, if it says not seeing forms you expect, I can go through and either update my NRDS ID or add my NRDS ID if I need to get that uploaded. So the NRDS ID on here is already added. All right. Or if you're a Canadian real estate agent, you can also link web forms on here from CREA. All right. You'll want to sign into that and allow you to upload those right away too. All right. So I'd highly suggest going through, clicking on that link if you have not added inside your NRDS number, as that'll help you to access that immediately. All right. But inevitably, if I want to come on here and say, hey, I want to add inside something else on the seller side that I saw was missing. All right, maybe I want to put inside the estimated compensation cost for seller. I'm just going to use this one as an example. Once again, I can just click that add button and this will add it in right away. So if you notice, I clicked add on here. It's automatically up here under they put it as not filed. That's okay. All right, but now I've got this up here right away because obviously it's not filed on here. And I can even drag this around if I want to. So I can say, hey, let's put this under listed. Then I can add this in right away. Yep, Lone Wolf Transact is going to be taking the place of DocuSign. It's accessible right now, but DocuSign is going away on 7/14. All right. So that's simple to just go through and find paperwork and see what's accessible, and obviously make sure that your NRDS number or your CREA login is connected so you can get all the additional documents that are available. Now, outside of paperwork, we also have to have the signings on here. So once again, the signing section is what they would call it over inside DocuSign as the envelopes. All right, so it's now signings over inside Lone Wolf Transact. All right, and this is where you can actually go through and create any signing where you can send off those documents for any parties to actually go through and sign this. All right, it's just going to be the exact same as DocuSign or Dotloop, where it's a click to sign option, places where they can actually add inside their information that you might need. This will all be accessible. All right, now I'm not going to do any signings on here because inevitably when we get to the paperwork section, we're going to talk about how to edit it and then we can sign from there as well too. But if you already have the paperwork completed and you just need to do a signing, this is a quick way of doing that right away. All right. Now there's also a to-do section. So if you're like me and you love to like jot down what you need to do so you can mark it off and be able to see everything that's happening during the day and whatnot. All right. Or in this case, for the transaction, this will help out tremendously. So with that being said, if I want to add inside a list on here of items that I need to do, I can click on the add list section. I can make a name of the list. So maybe on this one, I'm going to call it, 123 Main Street seller items to complete. Right. Not the best list name, but that'll work for today. All right, so I'm going to add this in real quick. And this will just be the list name that I'm going to utilize for this particular list. You can make as many lists as you want to. All right. But once I do that, then I can go through, once again, I can always rename or delete this, but then I can go through and start to add items to that to-do list to get that taken care of right away. All right. So under add a to-do item, what I love about this is there's a couple different ways you can add inside that to-do item directly. So first and foremost, we can add inside, obviously, the name on here. So I'm going to say post open house. All right, let's do a quick one on here. But the great part is I can put in a due date on here. Now I can leave it as no due date. All right. Or I can even go in and say, hey, due relative to a transaction date or due on a specific date. So what I love about this is I can say, hey, due relative to a transaction date. And it can either be on, before, or after. So maybe I want to say after. Let's do, after. Let's do 4 days after. And then I can even say, hey, I want to host an open house 4 days after the list date. So I can get this listed and then I can host an open house that quickly on that. All right. Or maybe I want to do 7 days, just depending on, maybe I want to do it over the weekend, obviously, and I want to see when is this getting listed. If it's getting listed on a Sunday night or anything of that sort, well, maybe I want to wait until Saturday. All right. So in theory, that'd be 6 days, but I'll leave it at this. All right. So I can put on here post first open house for 123 Main Street. All right. And then I can even set up reminders for myself on here. But I'm going to leave this as is because hopefully I'll be going through and checking this as well. All right, but this is a nice little option on here to be able to say it's due relative to a transaction date, because outside of list date, I mean, there's other items like closing date, expiration, offer acceptance. So I can click save on here. And now I've got that new open house option that'll say, hey, once this changes to active, then that's going to give me 7 days when I'll need to then host it. All right, and of course, I can always just come through and click this little check button if everything is good to go. All right, so if that's been completed, I can mark that off right away. Now, the next big thing that we have on here is the timeline section. So under timeline, this is where you can actually add inside any items that you want to highlight. So as you can see, there's an event section at the top right up here. And I can see all my events for today that need to be completed. So I guess you can kind of think of it similar to the to-do section if you want to do it by the date, but inevitably on here, if I want to say, hey, like we're seeing on this, the title example is loan approval deadline. So maybe I want to put that in as, I'll put that in as well too, loan approval deadline. Right? I can add inside description. I can add inside the date everything is completed or needed to be completed on here. All right. So in this case, you can go through and access this right away to set up any types of deadlines, items as reminders, whatever it might be. So the to-do item or to-do list section is a great way to just kind of see all the items that you might need to complete. Whereas this on the event section is a great item to see everything that needs to be done in the near future. Just letting you know, like, hey, this is the D-Day for that one. Let's complete it then. All right, and you can also not only see it as a list, but you can also see it in the calendar view on here too. So that way, if you want to see everything that's occurring for this one particular transaction, you can access that right away. All right, I have not seen a way to connect this over to Google Calendar or iCal, unfortunately. Still looking for that on there. I haven't found anything in the back end to get that connected, unfortunately. And I've not seen the sync over either, but we'll take a look. Maybe something has changed on here. All right, things are always constantly updating, which is the good part. All right. Now, going back on here, then we also happen to have our history. Now, this is where you're going to be able to see your history of anything and everything you've done on this transaction. So just from the time that we started at 2:17 p.m. Eastern time on here, all right, we went through and we were able to basically do all of this just by getting everything going with just a few basic items. All right, so nothing too crazy. Right? So this is great just to see where everything is actually occurring from. All right, so I always love highlighting this. This is a great opportunity just to see what all have you actually completed on here, what all is being done, and it'll show you exactly what it was at what time on here too. All right, so we're gonna get to all these questions, I promise. I see all the questions coming in over in the chat section. I promise we're gonna get to all of them very, very soon. And we're not going to send out this recording, but it will be available over on scottleroymarketing.com under agent resources and recorded training classes. Right, that'll be available on there. All right. So now we've gone through all of this. The only other thing that I did want to highlight for y'all before we go back to the transaction section is that there are 3 dots at the top right. Obviously, you also have to have your little chat section on here. So if you want to go through and leave any comments, you can. You have this little question icon where you can actually go through and see your resources, or once again, you've got the 3 dots. Now, in this case, on this section, we're going to have apply template, share, export, and delete. So if you ever want to go through and delete this transaction, you can by clicking that delete button, or we can export it right away. And we're going to talk about this apply template section in 1 second. So I'm going to go back to our transaction now. So I'm going to click that transactions icon up here at the top left. So I'm going to click on transactions on here. Right. And this is where we're going to be able to go through and actually see all of our current transactions. So once again, it was called rooms previously over inside DocuSign. All right. On here, they have transactions instead. All right, so that's where we can access this right away. We can go through and search for it. We can view either the table or the cards like we're doing right now. All right, so now we're under our transaction section. We also have the signings option. So if you want to be able to view all signings in one location, you can do that as well too. Not just signings inside a specific transaction, but signings across the board for your entire Lone Wolf Transact platform. Right, and once again, you can always go through and create signings too. And then, of course, we have all of our templates. Now, I want to talk about the templates before we get back into the actual transaction we're working on, because this template section is going to be one of your best features that you could utilize at any time on here. That's going to save you so much time at the end of the day. Right. So with that being said, under the templates, we can go through and make a template that we can apply every time if we prefer. Now, we'll have to manually apply it, but it will be very simple to apply. So I'm going to click on the Add Template section. We'll talk about the signings in a second. And then if you are connecting your Lone Wolf Transact account over with your NRDS, that's going to give you all access to all the different forms on there. Now, if you have a Transact account through the MLS, you can connect this on here. This will help to just kind of sync it over with command right away too. All right, so I'm going to click on the Add Template section. And from here, I can go through and make a new template. So much like we were doing before, we were kind of creating that. This one, though, we can add inside what the name's going to be. So I'm going to put inside this, I'll use residential listing. That's perfect. Okay. I can choose the ownership. In this case, just going to be personal. And then for the description on here, I'm just going to put inside residential task, parties, and documents to use. All right, so once I click this create option on here, this is going to allow me to obviously name the template, but then I can go through and actually, as you see, add inside files, parties, and to-dos that I want to continue to utilize. And I can add this very easily each time that I go through and start a new transaction. All right, so I'm going to do the create option on here real quick. And this is where we can actually view our paperwork, parties, or to-dos. So if you notice, hey, there's certain documents that, from the checklist the office has, whenever I start the transaction, there are certain documents that I want to add each time. Maybe they're specific for yourself, specific for your brand, maybe some documents that you're typically utilizing that aren't required. Well, from here under the paperwork section, I can click on add paperwork. And this will allow me to go through and upload any of the documents I want to. All right, so I'm just going to click a few on here just to add them real quick. I just want to show you what this will look like. You know what? I'm going to add all these. Why not? All right, so once we add that in, obviously we are going to see a little check mark on here where it's going to be green. And it's going to say this has been added on here properly. All right. All right, and Jorge, you're actually looking at it right here. Once you're under that add paperwork button, whether it's under this section or under the transaction directly, it'll say either update NRDS number if you already have that on there, or the option to add that in right away. All right, but now I've got these added on here, and if I want to, I can also create a new folder. So I'm going to make a new folder because I don't want it to be as not filed on here each time. So I'm going to make a new folder and say, I'm going to say SLM documents for listings. All right, and that's what I'm going to name as mine. Now, once again, this is just the name of the folder on here, nothing too crazy. All right, but then I can drag this over if I want to. Now, I could have done this beforehand and then add these over, but going out of order on here, that's okay. And I just want to show you how simple it is to not only drag these around, but more importantly, whenever we want to apply this, to see what this is going to look like as well, too. So I've got this added in under the paperwork section on here. And then from there, I can also look at the parties if I want to. So if I have specific parties I want to add each time, I can go through and add this in. So maybe if you have a transaction coordinator, a VA, someone else that you're going to be working with consistently, maybe you're on a team and you're wanting to add your spouse or significant other, whoever it might be, this is a great option to add this in right away. All right, so I'm going to click on the add party option. And once again, if you have those contacts already saved inside Lone Wolf, this will pull up. If not, I'm going to click create new. All right, I'm going to put inside the role on here. So I'm going to act as if I am going to be the transaction coordinator in this case. So I'm going to do a transaction coordinator. Maybe not. All right. Yeah, I could put it as ad. I'll put it as admin. Why not? So I'm going to put myself in as an admin on here. And I'll add inside my email address. I'll add in the other one as well too. All right, just to save this right away. All right, I'll put inside the brokerage name. There we go. So I'm going to click that save option real quick, just so I can add inside another person. We can see their little designation over here, their role on the right-hand side. All right, so once again, it's that simple to add inside different parties that you may want to add each time. And this is once again under our template for residential listing I'm doing. And then under to-dos, if I want to add inside any to-dos on here, I'll go and I'll add another list. Maybe I want to say this is my seller to-do list. Right, and then from here, I can add inside any to-dos that I want to. All right, so I'm going to say host. Actually, you know what? On this one, I'm going to say send closing gift. And from here, if I have send closing gift, I can do it on a specific date or a relative date to the transaction. I can say that I want it to be on the closing date. There you go. All right. When this is recorded, unfortunately, the questions will not be on there. All right, it's just going to be the recording on here. All right, but now that I've got this template ready to go on here, I can go back over to my template section. All right, once again, I always like to say, check those three little dots at the top of here so I can either copy or delete everything. But if I go back to my template section, I can now see the templates again. But if I go back to transactions, I can add this template immediately before I ever even get inside the documents to start editing them. All right, so if I go under the transactions section on here, and I go back into the transaction that I was working on, so I'm going to go back into the transaction that I'm testing out on here just to play around. Well, once again, from those three dots at the top right up here, I can click on that and click on Apply Template. All right, when I click on Apply Template on here, this is going to allow me to add inside any templates we already have saved. So this is something I would highly suggest doing between now and the 14th. All right, so now and 7/14, all right, because inevitably, this is going to help you whenever you start utilizing Lone Wolf, solely to have all these templates ready to go, whether it's for sellers, buyers, renters, landlords, whatever it might be. All right, so if I click on Apply Template, I can pull from the drop-down template I want to utilize. So I'll use residential listing. All right, I can select whichever ones that I want on here. Here's everything that's on here right now. But if I say like, oh, you know what? I don't need these addendums after all. Let's just add these in. I can click apply, and this is automatically going to add this over to my template or over to my transaction. It won't replace anything, but it's going to add it as an additional section. So if I scroll down, I can see my SLM documents for listings that I added this in earlier. I can see over here that the parties went from 3 to 4 because we also added inside our admin. I can see in my to-do section, I now have the seller to-do list of send closing gift. All right, that's how simple it is to add everything in right away and to make it where you're working smarter, not harder. All right, and once again, to find the templates, we went back to the transaction section, and it's all under the template section on here, right at the top. All right, but I'm going to go back inside that transaction we're working on. So this is kind of the transaction homepage, not the transaction that you're under. All right, so I know it kind of gets a little confusing on there, but think of it, if you're inside DocuSign, you can see all the rooms, or you're inside a specific room. Well, this one, I can see all the transactions. That's where I can access the templates. And then, of course, on here, once I click on this, then I'm inside that one specific transaction. All right, so let's actually look at some of these documents on here. Now, one thing to note, if you are not an active licensed agent, if you try to go in and view any of these documents, you're typically going to have a massive watermark over it. All right, so if I'm under my own account, then that's where that watermark is going to display. All right, so that's why I'm using a test account today just to kind of help out in this case. So I'm going to come on here. Let's see the property showing and representation agreement. I'm going to click on this one real quick. And of course, if you notice, you've got the little dots, or not dots, but check boxes on the left-hand side. We can select multiple ones on here if we want to. And when we do that, we can then see down here, we have the option for editor. We have the option to sign, email, download, print, or delete in this case. All right, so I'm going to go through here and I'm going to do the editor option just for this one document. You can choose as many documents as you want to, but I'm just doing one today just to play around with it. Right. And once I click on that and select editor on here, all right, sure, I love it. There we go. Yeah, great. Send the feedback. Right. Then this is where it's going to display this right away for me to be able to go through and edit this. Now, once again, if you have a watermark on here, that typically is showing that you're not a licensed agent or active agent. That's what I've been running into. So if you are an active agent, that should not display a watermark on here. Or if some of the forms are displaying incorrectly or anything like that, it could just be how the forms were uploaded. But in most cases, you should be able to go through and edit this. All right, and then if you are setting up a template on there, you have to add that each time. All right, it's not going to auto apply, unfortunately. Right. And if you are getting an error message when trying to access it, either try it one more time. I've run into that before, or for the time being, if you want to try another document, since we're just kind of testing this out, please feel free. All right. But if you notice, once I'm in the editor on here, I can now go through and start to, well, edit everything. I've got checkbox options that are already completed on here. I can start to add inside information if I want to. So anything and everything is going to be accessible on here. I can add in other paperwork on the left-hand side. I can grab other transactions on here that I might want to use. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, right, On the right-hand side, I can also view the parties on here. I can view the listing information. All right, this is info that'll automatically populate on here as well too. So as you can see, I already got this 123 Main Street, Windermere, Florida added in. I can view offer information. So if I need to add that in later on, this is where that offer is going to come into play previously. So if I want to update that on any of the offer documents, I can. I can view all the different clauses on here. All right, so it doesn't look like there are any right now, but I can always create a clause if I need to. All right, and then of course I can also view all the different tools. If I need to add inside another text box, if I need to highlight anything, all right, if I need to add inside confidential or draft, whatever it might be, I can go through and update that as well too. All right. And we're not going to go over the DocuSign and the Lone Wolf. You can always upload that if you want to, where under that transaction section for the templates, you can always upload the PDF and then that'll allow you to go through and edit it in the editor. All right, but that's only if you want to download that and upload that over here. Once again, you are going to have all your different documents that'll be accessible, so you can use these instead. Right. Now, I'm going to say everything is good to go as is. This template's already been set up on here. If there's anything else that I want to add in, I can add this in right away. But inevitably, I'm just going to leave this as is because I want to see what that looks like. But like if I want to put inside my DRE, license number, I can add that on here. Like this is obviously going to be specific for California offices. I can add inside the address. Everything on here is going to be accessible where I can just go through and start to type it out. All right, so that's all available for us to do. But I'm going to go ahead and pretend like everything is good to go where I don't need to go through and edit it. But once again, if you're seeing this on here, you can go through and click on it and start to edit it much like you could over inside Dotloop or DocuSign. So I'm going to click that save button at the bottom right just to have everything saved on here. As you can see, it says save successful, or there's a save option at the top right. Now I can go through and print this or download it if I want to. So if you have someone that's saying, hey, I'd prefer for this to actually be on pen and paper for me to sign, you can print that right away or download it to print later on. All right, but if I click the prepare signing button at the top right, once I click on prepare signing, all right, now it's going to link with AuthentiSign. So AuthentiSign is going to be your new signing option that you can use right away. All right. So in this case, we've got the signing name on here. I can also specify what the return folder is going to be. So currently, these are all the folders we have over inside our section that we were looking at earlier, right? For all of our different documents, we had closed, under contract, listed, and then I had my SLM documents for listing. That's the one that I had over inside my templates that I uploaded. All right, so I'm going to say, let's put this under listed in this case. And I can click create. All right. Now from here, once I'm doing the signing, you'll see some additional items over here on the right-hand side. I can go through and edit, whether it's the docs. I can then go through and view the tools again. There's going to be multiple items now that I can go through and edit since it's not just a template anymore. I can view the layouts on here, so I can actually apply different layout, create them, different items to help out. I can view different options as well too. All right, but since I already went through under the back end of the editor, and in that case, I went through and edited anything and everything that I wanted to. All right, then I can click on add participants. And I can add myself, for instance. All right, or I can map the signers on here as well too. So I'm going to add myself. Great, so I'm going to click on save. Okay, I'm going to ignore these real quick. All right, you can also see up here, you can set the signing order. So in this case, if I want to change the signing order, I can update that right away. All right, and if I want to go through and map these, I can do that immediately. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to change on here. Let's add in a participant from the transaction. And from here, I'm going to add inside. In this case, I guess I chose the wrong one on here. So that's okay. I'm going to act as this one's the one I want to use. All right, and I can either do a remote signer, a reviewer, or I can CC on here. So I'm going to do a remote signer because I want them to actually sign. I'm going to select to add this on here, and I'm going to say that they're going to go under buyer one. I know technically they're the seller on here. I chose the wrong document. That's okay. So my apologies. That's on me. I messed that one up. All right. But in most cases, you'll actually be choosing the proper one in this case. All right. And that automatically added this in where I need to sign or where I need to initial. So I don't have to do anything on here. So once again, disregard this form on here. I chose the wrong one. My apologies. All right. So now I'm a buyer in this case, not a seller. That's okay. But once I click this next option on here, and maybe I even want to remove myself. All right. So I'm going to remove this from signing. I just want to go over to myself as the buyer on here. When I click that next option, all right, this will actually give me an expiration of what I can utilize on here. I can send reminders that are come over via email on here as well. All right, and I can even go through and customize the invites. So if I want to say, hey, this is the email that it's coming from, or sorry, this is the email it's going to. Here's the subject that we're going to have on here. I can change the subject, I can change the message, and then I can save this and import this each time. So if I want to add inside a specific message that I want to send for certain documents, maybe it's specific items that I'm like, hey, I want to make sure that they know about this before they sign everything. You can do that right away. All right, I'm going to leave this as is, though, just because I want you to see what this is going to look like when it comes through. So I'm going to click the save option, and then I'll click send. All right, so now this is going to send over. And as you can see, property showing a representation agreement. I've got 0 of 1 signed. This was just sent out on June 12th, 2026 at 2:53 p.m. Eastern time. I can resend this. I can always go through and resend the invites. I can reset it if I need to adjust this again and start again. I can duplicate it. I can view the signing details, or I can delete it. And when this comes over, this is what it's going to look like. So now it's going to show on here, hey, here's the Authentisign email. This just came through. Hello, Scott Leroy. They're inviting you to participate in as a signing party in Authentisign e-signature document signing. Here's the name of it. And when I click on start signing, here we go. Right? I can click on I accept, and this is going to allow me to go through and sign everything right away. So if I click on this and say, hey, let's sign on here, I can click this to sign it. It's then going to give me different fonts that I can use if I want to. I can draw this. I can upload my signature. All right, but once I set that, I can now once again just click to sign. And then once that person says, hey, let's complete the signing on here, all this is all good to go. All right, I can then either print this or download this saying that I've completed everything on here as well. All right, so it's that simple for someone to be able to receive this from Authentisign and sign it right away. All right, and if I refresh this now it's going to show that 1 of 1 have been signed on here and everything is good to go. All right, but I'm going to delete this because I don't want to cause any issues on this account. Okay. All right, it's that easy to go through and delete the signing as well, too. All right, so you can't edit the completion landing page, but you can edit the email that's getting sent off. Yep, and this is very similar to DocuSign and .loop. The good part is it's not that much of a transition. That's the good part. It's just kind of learning where everything is, and then also the new terminology for it. All right, but once we have everything filled out on here, if I didn't delete the signing, then if I went back over to my opportunities, then under here, when I'm in the opportunity section, much like you have in .loop and DocuSign, it's showing that I'm attaching files from Lone Wolf Transact. I'm under listed. And then on here, I technically have that one still. So I could add this inside and I'd be good to go. Now, once again, obviously, this is not the one that I'd want to use on here because that's cancellation of list, but I'm just showing you how simple it is to find that. And if you also click the 3 dots to the right of working folder on here, obviously you can change between those. And here's my SLM documents for listing. So those are different folders we have. But if I click the 3 dots, I can also click on include transact forms. And I have noticed that's going to show a good amount of additional forms on here that we can access. So these are the other transact forms that are over in the back end that we can then pull over if we need to. All right, now none of these are signed or anything though, so I probably don't want to get that updated. I just want to show you how simple it is to go through and access that. All right, now the last thing I want to show you on Transact on here. Yep, and the parties will receive that copy on there whenever they go through. Once this actually was completed, just to give you a heads up of what this looks like, here is the example of what came through over to myself. This just came through right now saying, here's the signing complete. Here's where I can download the document. Here's where I can download the certificate. And then, of course, here's where I can save or print these separately as well, too. And it will show when it's going to expire, which is roughly 7 days from the date that it's completed. Now, one last thing that I do want to show y'all before we go back through everything that we talked about today and then where to find the recording, because I know we're coming to the end of the class on here. One last thing. If you're on your transaction main page, all right, so if you're under the main page on here for transacts, so transact.workflow.lwolf.com, or once again, if you go to foundation.lwolf.com, platform.lwolf.com, you can sign in with your Lone Wolf login and password. But if you click on your initials at the top right up here and select manage account, all right, so I'm not going to be able to because I don't have you'll get a code that's going to come over. But if you click on manage account on here, it'll send you a code. And then that way you can actually set up your single sign-on. All right, so you can set up your single sign-on here to access that right away. All right, and the reason I would highly suggest that is because if you're going through command, this will help where you don't have to sign in every time with your login and password for Transact. I'll just automatically select that on here to sync right away. And a great question came in. Do you have to create an opportunity to create and send CAR documents for signature? No, you can technically go to Lone Wolf directly. You can sign to your Transact account directly. And you can start everything from there. All right. But in this case, I would highly suggest going through the opportunity section because it'll connect it back on here right away. All right. Now to finalize everything that we talked about today. So first thing first, we started by seeing, is your Transact account up and running again? All right, so we clicked on our name at the top right, select settings. And then from here, we made sure that our Lone Wolf account was connected. And if it was not connected, we talked about how to get that connected right away. Once it was connected, all right, under opportunities, we started this right away on here so we can actually create the opportunity to play around with this. All right, from there, once we created the opportunity, we connected it under documents to Transact. This is where it'll say sync to Transact, or if you have multiple options, it'll allow you to choose from a dropdown how to sync this. All right. All right, from there, we can click on Go to Transact. All right, that's going to take us over to our transaction directly for that one opportunity. And this is where we talked about the details on the left-hand side. We talked about all the paperwork option. And once again, for the person that asked about the NRDS number, this is where you can click Add Paperwork and add in that NRDS number. All right, we talked about signings on here and what that's going to look like. We talked about our to-do section, how you can add these in. We talked about the timeline and where you can add inside specific items in the timeline that you might want to see in the future. We talked about our history and how everything is populating on here and everything will actually display. All right, we then talked about transactions on here, how you can view all transactions in one location. All right, or how you can add a new transaction if you want to start from here. Once again, I would always suggest starting from the opportunity so it syncs, but if you do want to start on here, you just have to download it. You'll be good to go. All right, we talked about where you can view all the signings for all the different transactions. And of course, we can add inside the templates on here as well, too. So you can auto-apply, or not auto-apply those, but apply them to each transaction moving forward. All right, and then of course, we also talked about how you can go through and edit any of these documents in our editor, how you can start the signing on here, and then what that looks like when it's signed and how you can pull that over directly into your account on here right away in your opportunity. All right. Now, once again, this entire class is going to be accessible on scottleroymarketing.com. Once you sign in with your Market Center number on here, all right, I'm going to sign in real quick. The agent resources page is going to populate for you. When that comes up, you can then access under recorded training classes on here, the Lone Wolf Transact option. This is going to display all the different classes, all the different tips that we have available. Now, just a reminder, the Lone Wolf Transact classes are every Friday in the month of June. So we got 2 more coming up in the month of June. They're going to be right at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to come back on, please feel free. It's going to be the same information next week, but inevitably, if anything changes in the back end of Lone Wolf Transact or anything updates, we'll be able to go through that as well too. All right. And then, of course, we have all the different tips on here as well. And if you do want to watch this, I know there's a lot to cover in the 1 hour on here. Once it's uploaded, you are able to change the speed on there to slow everything down to make it even longer. So that way you can kind of go at it your own pace for it. You can start and stop, but hopefully this will help tremendously to access that. All right. So I hope y'all are enjoying this as much as I enjoyed teaching it. Please let us know if you ever need anything at all. This will be uploaded very, very soon onto our website. So please feel free to come on here and take a look at it. It will have the date in the title. So look for Lone Wolf Transact 101-6/12/2026. And that way we'll have it on there. All right. So have a fantastic Friday. I look forward to seeing y'all very soon. And I hope you'll have a great weekend.